Hello, Angry Moderate. Oh, on such a beautiful October day. October 18th, I think it is. Is it the 18th? No, is it the 17th? Is it the 18th? I think it's the 18th. October 18th, 2012. Angry Moderate. Just, how can you be angry when it's 62 degrees, when the sun is shining, when the breeze is rustling through the leaves on a gorgeous autumn afternoon? It's very difficult to muster the ire to be angry, but the Angry Moderate can always find something out there in political, econo-social land about which to get all worked up, you know, like in Tommy Boy, when he gets all, you know, worked up. What was his name? I loved him. Chris Farley. I miss him. There are lots of comedians and actors whom I miss. I miss George Carlin. I miss Cleavon Little. I miss Chris Farley. I miss John Belushi. Their commentary on the current goings-on would be delicious, particularly George Carlin. I have to admit to having an extraordinarily soft place in my angry heart, not that angry, for George Carlin. I really miss him a lot. In any event, here I am, Angry Moderate. Gorgeous afternoon in bucolic, rural, lovely, wonderful, delicious New Hampshire. I think have I just used the word delicious twice in the first 5 minutes of the show? Wow. I don't know. Angry Moderate, being narcissistic, looking at himself there, wearing my beautiful LL Bean sweater, feeling fairly, you know, mainstream, which is sort of what the whole point of the Angry Moderate show is about. But it's not so much about being mainstream, so I don't want to sound too high-pitched. The Angry Moderate is not concerned with being mainstream. I'm concerned... Did you hear that? It's a turkey. There are turkeys in the woods behind me. Before I get into anything with regard to the world of economics and politics and blah, 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 I live in Etna, New Hampshire, on a hill. On a pond on a hill, and when I drive home from work at night, I usually drive home at night, the life forms that I pass, oh, something just landed on my head. The life forms that I pass there are porcupines, deer, bear. I saw a bear about 2 months ago, bear, mice, lots of mice. What did I say? Oh, I'm pretty sure I saw a fisher cat the other day, a fisher. It looks like a, ferret, it looked like a black ferret running across the road. Then there was something, what was it the other day that I saw? All quadrupeds, no bipeds, except for human beings. No Bigfoot, though I'm beginning to wonder. There are, everywhere I go, up there on my way up to Etna, frogs, lots of frogs, which by the way can be problematic when you're driving home late at night on like a rainy night. They have this happen, right? Hate to say, you know. But, you know, you're driving up the hill and the frogs are leaping from like one side of the road to the other. And it's not like one frog, it's like lots of frogs. And, yeah, you get the drift anyway, don't you? Anyway, Angry Moderate, October 18th, 2012. The election is but weeks away, and I've been kind of partially, with a somewhat discerning ear, listening to the debates on TV. First things first. I know that everybody's railing on, you know, Candy Crowley, and who was the other guy? I can't remember. Was it Jim Lehrer? I can't remember. Who was it who moderated the first debate? I can't remember. And everybody is, you know, sort of getting on them. Now, here's what I would do, right? So here's my take on moderating a debate between a president and a would-be president. I would do it the exact same way I would moderate any debate. There would be no difference. When you get to the end of your 2 minutes, nope, time's up. Stop. You have to stop. No, and I would just keep, no, you have to stop. Stop, right? Stop. You're done. Your time is up. You lose. I don't get this whole... These men who are in these debates are in many ways, to me, in my opinion, demonstrating how they operate by virtue of the way that they debate. They operate based upon sort of this hubristic sense that they have no constraints, that their ideas are going to be heard no matter what. Look, if you want to have your ideas heard no matter what by like 9 people, come on the Angry Moderate Show. Mr. Obama, Mr. Romney, come sit with the Angry Moderate. When you start babbling on, I'll be like, no, time's up, stop, no, stop, cut the camera, stop, right? Because I don't get it. I don't get why Candy Crowley just wasn't saying, stop, shush, your time is up, all right, next. I don't get that at all. It's this, when did this happen? I thought debates were supposed to be here. You get 2 minutes. Why do they say you have 2 minutes? Okay, you have 2 minutes to answer the question. No, I don't. I have as much time as I want because nobody's going to stop me, right? Whether it's Mr. Romney or Mr. Obama or whomever, it doesn't matter. They just go on. Oh, he spoke for, I'm going to get... So just watching it was like, oh, this is painful. And then listening to, like, here's the deal. The Obama camp said about the Romney camp and about Romney, look, he'll flip-flop on anything. He'll lie about anything. He'll be untrue about anything to get elected. He'll say one thing 2 months ago and he'll say something totally different now because nobody remembers. Nobody remembers. And he's right. But you know what? The same is true for our president. We'll say virtually anything, whether or not he actually believes in it or follow through with that policy, because nobody remembers. Because people don't hear the substance of what's being said. They don't pay attention to the substance, even if this whole fact-checker thing, you know? Oh, the debate fact-checker said, that's a 5 hands down, thumbs down on the facts. Nobody pays attention. All they pay attention to is how convincing the candidate is. And by convincing, it's not convincing based upon real verifiable information. It's not convincing based upon data that's going to be used to actually promote policy that's going to help the United States and or the world out of the current economic morass in which it finds itself. It's simply how, and they know this, by the way, the candidates know this. All it is let's get to the rear brain, let's get to the reactive brain of the citizens of the United States, and let's have them react to how we carry ourselves, how we're dressed. Do we sweat too much? How are we coiffed? How's our hair look? What are we wearing? That's all it is. And you listen to people who are interviewed on radio or on television after, oh, I think Mr. Obama won the debate because, yeah, but did you understand really anything that he was saying? Do you understand anything about the tax code? Do you understand anything about the supposed tax cuts for the rich? La 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 la. Do you understand taxes? Do you understand how taxes operate? Do you understand that taxes are not revenues that are necessarily needed by the government for spending? That government spending and tax revenue aren't totally bound together? Do you understand that? That's today's gesture from the Angry Moderate with regard to the presidential debates is this. Please. Please. It's a popularity contest. It should be reality TV. Right? Cops, right? Bad boys, what you gonna do? And then next up on reality TV, real TV, true TV, Romney and Obama go head to head because, what? As if they're saying anything of substance? All they're doing is, and when they practice debates, what do they practice? How they sound. How they can convince you and me to believe something regardless of the veracity of their statements. Truth or honesty or any kind of verifiability takes a back seat to convinceability. Right? If we can convince the voter, then we can get into office. Ooh, look at that. Right? Talk about hair. If we can convince the voter, we can get into office. And if we can get into office, then we can do whatever we want. We can do our thing. Doesn't matter if you're a Democrat or Republican. I find the whole electoral deal right now fairly disappointing. Disappointing. Because I don't see a real dramatic difference between the two candidates. And yet for some reason, the media and the blogosphere, particularly the blogosphere, I find this fascinating. Everybody bashes on the sort of the mainstream media, right? You know, everybody's like, oh, the mainstream media, they're just, trying to make a buck. Even though the mainstream media is just trying to make a buck, their presentation, for the most part, is kind of centrist. Yeah, it's very it's dramatic, and it has to do with sound bites because they are trying to make a buck. But the blogosphere is very interesting because I've really been interested in this. I read virtually, all of the economics blogs, left and right, from The Automatic Earth to Zero Hedge. I read these blogs because I want to know, not only, there's good information if you can cull through some of the vitriol and some of the ideological stuff. There's some good information in all of these. But I want to know, what's happening in terms of the upswell of anger on either side of the political spectrum. You go to Zero Hedge, which is a fairly anti-central bank, anti-Federal Reserve, anti-Ben Bernanke, anti-Barack Obama blog portal. And there are some interesting articles, and Zero Hedge as a place picks up different articles from all of it. There's some interesting stuff. But what's fascinating is if you read the comments, man, these people on these blogs, all they do is feed off of each other. I tell you, it is so much like Blazing Saddles and Gabby Johnson. I'm glad those kids were here. Not only was that authentic frontier gibberish, rarit. You remember that scene, right? Where Gabby Johnson says rarit, and everybody agrees, rarit, right? And what are these blogs like? Someone writes, Someone writes a blog post and they make it sound really, convincing and angry, and they use really great language, and it's like they're pounding their fist on the bully pulpit, or they're pounding their fist on the preacher's lectern, only they're doing it in the blogosphere. And people read the blogs and their anger gets up because they're thinking back here, which of course, as I've said, is an oxymoron. They're reacting, right? It's all this rear brain stuff where it's like they're reading and their blood pressure's going up and they're getting angry. They have no idea what they're thinking about. Their analysis may have nothing to do with what's really going on. But people are getting fired up, and then they're writing, and then the comment section. And everybody's building off of each other, and they're voting. This is again my favorite part, that they vote for each other, right? They vote thumbs up and thumbs down. Right, so people do blog posts or comments, and then I'm sure, right, they go back every couple of, hours. How many people have voted thumbs up or thumb down? Am I part of the in club or am I part of the out club? Rarit. What does it have to do with what's going to make us better? Here's something very interesting. Paul Krugman wrote this book called End This Depression Now. End this depression now! Right? Referring to what's happening right now. And he talks about anti-austerity measures, and he talks about the Federal Reserve, and he talks about quantitative easing, and he talks about bugs on my forehead. He doesn't talk about bugs on my forehead, but I just had a bug on my forehead. That's the second bug on my forehead on this beautiful day today. At least it's not a bee on my forehead. It's just sort of a random beetle. Random forehead. Random beetle forehead landing. RBFL. Right? Oh, you had a ribful? Yeah, random beetle forehead landing. So, Ben Bernanke, Paul Krugman talks about how austerity is a bad thing, right? Where governments cut back, and everybody suffers, and he says this is a bad thing. Okay. And he says in his book, essentially I'm paraphrasing, how he doesn't understand why everybody falls in line, lockstep with the austerians, with the people who would proffer austerity. Now, the people who would basically willingly go through a terrible depression and economic time because they see no way out other than cutting the debt. Carl Denninger's like that, right? You ever go to the marketticker.org? Carl Denninger, one of the most bellicose and obnoxious human beings in terms of his voice. His economic analysis is interesting from time to time, but oh my gosh. You go there of your own, I'm warning you. You read the... Anyway. There are people who would rather, go through terrible economic times, 25% unemployment, and try to come out on the other side, whatever the other side is. Would rather see all the banks, the too big to fail banks, fail. If you invested in bad mortgage securities and no bailouts, down you go, right? Now, here's the thing. There was a time when I totally agreed. I totally agreed with that premise, that idea, that here are these institutions that have levered themselves, right? and have made all these bad bets, and by making them, of course, have made themselves billionaires. Oh, here comes the beetle. There it is. Look, it's a ladybug. Check it out. See it? There it is. Wait, can you see the ladybug? Nice. Yep, there it goes. All right. I figured out the random beetle issue. It's a ladybug. Love ladybugs. So, you have this situation that Krugman is sort of doesn't understand. Why people would want to willingly suffer austerity if you can use the actions of a central bank to make things okay, or at least, make things okay in the short term and then try to fix things structurally for the long term. Now, when I was part of that voice of people who were saying, we need a depression. We need to go through a depression because we bought ourselves this situation and we can't buy ourselves out. We did it through fraud. We did it through malfeasance. We did it through fraudulent underwriting of mortgages. We did it through the creation of synthetic investment vehicles that are impossible to understand and that made some people incredibly wealthy and that destroyed the portfolios of many others, yada, yada. And I believed that. That was a message that I believed. Why did I believe that message? Where did that come from? Well, it came from anger. It came from a place of frustration in a system that seems out of my ability to influence, right? Because I go food shopping, and my salary is a certain level. It doesn't go up a lot, doesn't go up, but the cost of food goes up. And I read stories about the guy who goes off and buys an island in the Pacific, or the folks who work in the financial industry and who buy a $2.5 million home, on Cape Cod or in the Hamptons and tear it down and build another one. And I look at how they made their money. And again, this is really important. Like, I'm not going to sit here and say that they are wrong. I'm not going to sit here and say, and these Wall Street guys, and kind of go off on, because, look, would I have done the same thing had I have been in that industry? Can't say I wouldn't, right? Can't say I wouldn't. Wouldn't be fair for me to make that call. But when there is a disparity, and when people on the lower end of that disparity see unequal treatment before the law, and see a situation in which there is a group of people who act above the law, and who are able to get away with, in their opinion, all kinds of actions that are just confounding to those of us, or that group of people who can't get away with that stuff. I could give you the simple metaphor, the basic metaphor, the basic analogy. Two people get arrested for the same crime. One is rich, one is poor. The rich person pays bail and sits on the beach until his trial. He hires the best lawyer to get him off. The poor person, same crime, sits in jail until his trial because he can't afford bail. The state gives him an attorney. The state's attorney is probably working on 32 cases, can't do nearly the job that the other attorney can do, and the guy gets convicted. Now, people would say, look, that's just how it is. There's inequality in our society, and that's how life is. That's how life is. There is just always going to be inequity. There are going to be rich and poor. And maybe that's true. I think that that's true. But that doesn't mean that the people who are suffering at the hands of the system don't get angry, right? One of the reasons that I call my show The Angry Moderate is because at least I try to sit in my front brain as much as I can and take a step back when I'm angry and say, okay, what's this all about here, right? And to kind of look and say, okay, politically, in terms of ideology, this is not really a left and right thing, right? The economics, both sides of the same coin in the United States, whether they are, whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, both sides are proffering many of the same economic policies because we have an irredeemable currency and a Federal Reserve, and that Federal Reserve uses its ability to create money to make banks whole. That's what the Federal Reserve does. You understand that, right? The Federal Reserve right now is buying up $40 billion a month in agency-backed, mortgage-backed securities in order to take those nasty, toxic assets off the hands of the banks. So what does that do to the banks? It makes them whole. The next bubble, by the way, here's the next asset bubble. Oh, shh. Don't tell anybody. The next asset bubble, which is being blown right now, is mortgage-backed securities. Because the Federal Reserve is the buyer of last resort. And because they have access to unlimited money, because they can print it and create it, they're going to keep buying up these mortgage-backed securities. And as they do so, there's no reason for investors not to invest in them because there's no risk involved, right? Until, of course, the policy changes and the mortgage-backed securities go down the tubes. But that's the next asset bubble. It's not going to be a housing bubble, another housing bubble per se. It's going to be a bubble in these mortgage-backed securities. It's going to be a securities bubble. Hey, it's going to be a securities bubble, right? Angry Moderate, October 18th, 2012, predicting right here, live on television, that the next bubble that we will face is a mortgage-backed security bubble. That will be the asset bubble. It will be a securities bubble based upon the actions of the Federal Reserve. Admitted actions, right? They are admitting the fact that what they're trying to do is lower interest rates and create more confidence in the market. And what will happen? Look, you know what will happen, and I know what's happening. Right? What will happen, of course, is that interest rates will go down. Banks will eventually, these big private banks, will start to underwrite more mortgages because all of the toxic mortgages that they were holding will be off their books. They'll be on the books of the Federal Reserve, right? Federal Reserve will have purchased all of these, toxic assets. Something will have to be done eventually with regard to these assets. But there'll be trillions and trillions of dollars worth of toxic assets on the books of the Fed. They will have been taken off the books of many of these other smaller private banks, and the banks will say, well, I guess we can underwrite some mortgages because in the end, if things go awry, we know that the Federal Reserve will come in and save us. We know that the government will act through the Federal Reserve to bail us out because otherwise the economy goes down the tube. See, that's anyway. Rabbit. So I listened to Paul Krugman, Nobel laureate, Nobel-winning economist, and his kind of like puzzlement. Why is it that people would be, willing to suffer austerity when we have a central bank that can get us out of this depression? Paul, the reason is because people are angry. People are angry about this disparity, this growing disparity in society. People are angry when they see Wall Street executives purchasing another $1 million yacht while they go to the grocery store and can't buy a big birthday cake for their kids, have to buy the small birthday cake for their kids because people are angry, Paul. Now, you might say, Paul, that it's self-defeating. You might say, well, people are angry, but they're just shooting themselves in the foot, metaphorically, of course. They're just shooting themselves in the foot by promoting policies or trying to promote policies where deficits are cut and which are, essentially policies of austerity, of cuts, of contraction, of taking away, of getting rid of social programs, etc. Yes, that's the thing, Paul. That's the thing. People are willing to suffer that. That's the part that the liberals don't get. That's the part that a lot of the liberal media and the liberal economic establishment don't get. Look, there is not a big difference between this issue and when Mohandas Gandhi, actually Ben Kingsley playing Mohandas Gandhi, because I got to admit, I've only read a little bit of Gandhi's autobiography and some of his works, but I loved the film. I thought it was brilliant. When Ben Kingsley, when the British say, well, but you wouldn't expect us to just leave. I mean, we're not just going to walk out of India. And Ben Kingsley, playing Gandhi, says, yes, in the end you will just walk out. Because not only can 100,000 Englishmen not control, 75, I don't know, how many million, 375, 600 million Indians if they don't cooperate. But also he says, look, yes, we're going to have our problems. Yes, India is going to have its problems when the British leave. But they're going to be our problems, not yours. Because we want to be a free people. And this idea of people willingly going through difficult economic times to be free, right? I mean, this is what happened in the post-colonial period, right? In the period of time when colonialism was ending in Africa, in Asia. And people knew, we're going to go through some really hard times in this post-colonial era, but we're willing to do it because at least we're free. Freedom means more than comfort, right? People were willing to suffer some difficulty in order to be free. But the same is true about social class, if you will. That people who are impoverished and who are going through difficult times with regard to their situation and look at the disparities in society and look at the extraordinary amount of wealth controlled by such a small percentage of the population, and a lot of people are willing to say, yeah, we'll go through tough times, we'll go through a depression if it means getting rid of that inequity, if it means taking away some of the extraordinary power that comes with the wealth creation that our current monetary system propagates. Now, I'm not angry moderate. Angry moderate is moderate. Angry moderate is not revolutionary. Right? I'm not sitting here saying that I agree with that view, but there are a growing number of people who, if you ask them what's more important, your comfort and your ability to get food stamp subsidies and your ability to have unemployment insurance, or economic justice, for lack of a better term. There are a lot of people out there who would say, justice. I want to see those dudes who have taken this economy and destroyed it, I want to see them held accountable. Those dudes who underwrote the fraudulent mortgages, who knew they were underwriting bad mortgages, the dudes who lied about the values of their securities, the dudes in the ratings agencies, the people in the ratings agencies who were being paid by the big banks, who purposely fudged the data, I want to see them held accountable. I want to see them go to jail. Yeah, but if they're held accountable and they go to jail, you realize that if we do that, if we move in that direction as a society, we are going to be in a whole heap of spiderweb. What is that, a cobweb? A whole heap of economic hurt. Our national security is going to be compromised. Your comfort, right? Things are going to be hard. Are you willing to go through those kinds of hard times? And then people will say, I'm already going through hard times. No. No, these are totally different hard times. It's a whole different category of hard time, what I'm talking about, right? I mean, if you're making $20,000 or $30,000 a year, yeah, those are hard times. There's no question. The wind is picking up. And the tripod upon which the camera is standing seems steady. If you are unemployed or whatever, if you're making 20 or 30 grand a year in the United States right now, those are hard times. And if you have a family, those are really hard times. But they are a far cry from the kinds of hard times that something just landed on my head. I feel like I'm in the great outdoors. They're a far cry from the kind of hard times that either A, a lot of the people around the world suffer, right? Or B, that we would suffer if we had 25 or 30% unemployment and no ability to access any kind of unemployment insurance and no ability to access food stamp subsidy. That's a whole different kind of hard times. And that's why a lot of people say, well, then you have to get back to community living. You have to live in your small communities and take care of each other and CSAs and barter and cooperative farming and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, it's a great idea. It's a great idea. Right? We do it in the small communities here in New Hampshire and Vermont. We do all kinds of barter and all, absolutely. And the government hates it, by the way. The government hates it because we're not out with our credit cards at Walmart spending money. They hate the fact that, like, on the listservs of the towns, people are saying things like, oh, I'll give you my VCR if you'll give me some snow tires. They're like, no! No, you must buy a new VCR. You must buy snow tires. That's how we grow the economy. But this is one of the cruxes, one of the many cruxes of the issue, right? The fulcra, right? Here comes another. Oh, look. Can you see it? No, you can't. It's on my knee. There's something going on. There is a ladybug invasion. Bye. There he goes. Or she. I guess it's interesting, isn't it, that there are he ladybugs. Right? Anyway, rabbit. So back to the debates, right? Back to the presidential debates. So these guys, look, professional politicians, and here's the thing. I mean, I was thinking about this the other day because, you know, what else do you do when you drive to and from work, right? You listen to the radio or you think. That's what I think, right? I do my best thinking. Whoa! Being attacked now by ladybugs, right? I do my best thinking in the car. I like to go for long drives. You know, when I coach soccer and I have a 2-hour drive to a game, it's great. I get so much done in the car just thinking. So I was thinking the other day, and I was thinking, you know, politicians are amazing human beings. The majority of them are extraordinarily well educated, have been to the best universities, colleges, Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Dartmouth, whatever. Are accomplished professionals, lawyers, physicians, etc. And you know, really are. I mean, you know, if you're looking at if you're kind of looking at society in terms of the best and the brightest, right? What was that? David Halberstam's book, The Best and the Brightest? If you're looking at the best and the brightest in quote marks, right? Don't want to offend anybody. That politicians are amazing. They're amazing human beings. They're brilliant. What's interesting, and I'm not going to sit here and, you know, do that silly thing that everybody does, you know, about politicians being they're corrupted by their power. Yeah, everybody is, right? Anybody who gets into a position of power is going to be pretty much corrupted by that power, right? Rarin. But what's so interesting about politicians is that when they enter public service, I would make the argument that they are extremely sincere about public policy, issues of public policy. They are extremely sincere about doing good for the people, whether that be on the Republican side, conservative side, in terms of that view of, you know, cutting taxes and making sure that there's a more free business environment for the blah, 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 or on the left with regard to social programs, etc. I would argue that both sides of the political spectrum when it comes to, you know, new politicians, incipient politicians, are very sincere. And what's interesting is they get into office and they work in politics for a long time, and their sincerity doesn't change in terms of what they perceive. They perceive that they're just as sincere, but their modus operandi change so that they become much more concerned with how they appear and how they sound and how they're going to convince you to vote for them. So what becomes important is not that they have necessarily changed on a deep level with regard to their actual sincerity. I don't buy this argument that politicians, when they become corrupt, don't care about the people. I think they do. I think that deep down they have sort of a sense that they care for the people. But what they become much more polished at, and what they, that was a bad sentence, the things at which they become much more polished and practice more are manipulation, are the use of words and images and sounds and sound bites and fundraising in order to get elected. What becomes their focus is their appearance and how they appear and how they can get you not to think with your front brain, but to think with your, to react, right? That's what's so interesting, that politicians make it's a ruse, it's a total ruse. On the front end, when they're talking to you at debates and at, you know, when they're giving speeches, they say to you that they're appealing to your sense of reason. They say, I'm appealing to your sense of reason. I want you to think about this, but that's exactly what they don't want you to do. They don't want you to think about it. They want to convince you, regardless of the issue, regardless of the data, by virtue of their presentation, by virtue of their voice, by virtue of their look, by virtue of their confidence, by virtue of their charisma. They want to convince you to follow them, to vote for them. It's such a fascinating paradox that they stand in front of you, politicians, and say, don't you understand the facts? But what they're really saying is, am I convincing you to vote for me based upon my tone, based upon my sincerity, or at least my actions, my theater of sincerity? It's so interesting. So I watch the debates, and I don't watch the debates for any kind of policy statements. I don't watch the debates to get any kind of understanding with regard to what these men really believe. Impossible to know what they really believe. I watch them to see who stylistically is probably appealing more to the reactive brain of the American people, to the American people's virtual inability to actually look at a bunch of data, cull that data, and based upon their values, make a decision, left or right, Democrat or Republican. So interesting to me. Now, I wonder if we were a multi-party, if we were a multi-party democracy like most of the nations of the world that are democracies, I wonder if it would be different. I wonder if in an electoral system in which we were a multi-party democracy, if there would be less of a penchant on the part of politicians to be so theatrical and so concerned with convincing you of one thing or another based upon reactive thinking, because in a multi-party democracy, oftentimes it's difficult to know who you're appealing to, right? And, if you are if you're the, Greens or you're a conservative party. Anyway, I don't know. But, so I don't watch the debates to get a sense for what these men believe, because they're not telling us what they believe. They're saying that they're telling us what they believe, but what they're really doing is trying to convince us to convince us to vote for them, to convince us that they are the person that you want to be president. And they do it by virtue of all of these motions, gestures, their look, their tone of voice, and yet at the same time they're saying we're so sincere. It's a wonderful irony, wonderful irony. So anyway, Angry Moderate on this absolutely gorgeous day. I mean, I have to admit, I'm one of those people who really does love the sun. Though I lived in the Southern California desert for a year. I lived outside of Palm Springs in a community called Indian Wells. About 20 years ago, I was working out there for a year in the California desert, and it was sunny every day. Every day was sunny, and I would wake up and I would look out of the window of my apartment at the base of a mountain, and I would peer out there and I'd be like, oh, another sunny day, right? There was no variability. I moved that back after a year because I hated the fact, oh, here comes a dog. Here comes a dog coming to visit me. Are you going to come visit me? Hi. Hi there. No, don't take that. He was, huh? Hi. I got a dog here. Wait, can you say hi to the camera? Hi. Say hi. Right there. Right? Yeah. It's a nice looking golden retriever, huh? Right? Angry Moderate, not much of a dog lover, but I can pretend. Oh, another one! Another dog coming. This is awesome. 2 dogs. Right? Right? Great. Are they brothers or sisters?
No, but they're both girls, but not related.
Hi, how are you? Angry Moderate, right? Doing a great job here of being a dog lover. Right? Oh, now. Right? Now they're gonna knock over my camera.
You look very comfortable.
Oh yeah, it's a beautiful day. Just talking to the camera here, enjoying the weather, enjoying the dogs.
Carry on.
Thank you. So the dog slobbered all over my camera case. Yeah. No, it's okay. I don't mind at all. It's all good. See that? See this? All that dog saliva. Yeah, I'm good at pretending to be a dog person because people don't understand when you're not a dog person, right? How can you not be a dog person? Well, I don't know, because they smell and they slobber all over the place, right? And you have to pay for their dog food, right? I mean, I would be more of a cat person because I like cats' demeanor. I like cats' sort of indifference, and I like the fact that they can be playful one minute and then just be like, yeah, leave me alone. But cats make me sneeze. So I'm, in terms of pets, the ladybugs, I'm pretty good. Look here. Oh no, that's a bee. I don't want to have a bee for. But anyway, the Angry Moderate, October 18th. It was a very large bee. It's a bee the size of a golf ball. What the heck's going on here? Mutant bee, right? That's scary. Anyway, October 18th, 2012. I probably won't be back for another episode prior to the election, so that when you vote for president this coming election cycle, which is now, when you vote for president and when you vote for local politicians, try to think with your front brain. Try to look at all the information, then base your decision upon your values and vote, right? I tend to vote Democrat just because I tend to believe in having a lot of social programs for people in need. But that's just a values thing. And it doesn't mean that the other side of the equation is wrong. It doesn't mean the conservative side of the equation is wrong. It just happens to be my way of seeing the world when it comes to elections. I tend to vote Democrat in elections. I don't believe them any more than I believe the Republicans. I don't believe Barack Obama any more than I believe Mitt Romney. I think that both of them are not concerned with the truth. I think more concerned with being elected. But when it comes to the election, if you could take a look at all the information and try to really understand what's going on economically, try to really understand what's going on with regard to our Federal Reserve System, with regard to the way money is created, how that money gets into the hands of who it gets into, why that system may be problematic or may not be problematic, go on the internet. Read some of the works of Paul Krugman. Read some of the stuff on Zero Hedge, the market ticker. Read Eve Smith, who wrote a really good book or interesting book called Econ. Read Warren Mosler, who writes about something called modern monetary theory. Educate yourselves. Become educated, and then once you're educated and you have a sense for which direction you think in the short term is the best direction to go, because long term is a whole different issue, then vote based upon your values. It's about all the Angry Moderates got today. It's a gorgeous day. I'm going to go enjoy the rest of the day, and I hope you do too. Angry Moderate, with his sloppy, slobbery dog slobbery camera case, signing off. Peace.